we now join your regularly scheduled program, already in progress. Oh man, let's see if it'll stay up now for a few minutes. We'll gonna paste this just in the main Discord here while we see if we can get this fixed. Oh man. Well, we're here. We lost everybody, but we're here. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this, and if nothing else, I'll clip this and use it, put it up in a condensed format.
There's Twitch viewers and all that.
If
So with this in mind, I don't know how accurate these sites really are, and that's why I decided to compare them all.
Artea
what we're going to look at first is
Azura
the average daily player count. I obtained this data from 3 websites, activeplayer.io, mmostats.com, and Steam Charts.
We're going to get some data here in a second.
And mmostats both estimate the data across all platforms, whereas Steam Charts is the only reliable source of information as it tracks when people are actually playing. However, in saying that, this is only people who have the Steam version of ESO. Many people, including myself, do not have the Steam version, or they play on console, of course. So the numbers from Steam Charts will look quite smaller compared to the data from the other 2 websites. So I've collated the data for the past year of average daily players.
At least go check it out.
These numbers are going to be people who probably play the most consistently as opposed to total monthly players. So it filters out all the people who log in probably once or twice a month. Right, so looking at the graph, you can see that I added the dates of the DLC and chapter releases. This gives us a good idea of how and why the numbers have fluctuated over the past year. Just starting off, I want to say the data from Steam Charts in green and the data from MMO Stats in blue seem to be pretty consistent with each other. I don't know why the data from Active Player in red is so all over the place. Alright, so we're going pretty strong last year in June when High Isle released. However, we can see it dip down to its lowest points on the green and blue lines in August when, coincidentally, Update 35 dropped. For those of you who are unaware, Update 35 changed a lot of things with the game and its combat.
Kind of seems like ActivePlayer.io has like a little bit better data is kind of what it looks like to me. I don't know, it's kind of interesting. I assume that they're judging like maybe number of times you log in, like one of them's maybe more frequent, and that's what they're judging here. Thanks, Lyriel, I appreciate that.
System, and there was a massive uprising from the community that forced ZeniMax to backtrack on almost all of their plans and propose changes. A bunch of people quit the game at this point or unsubscribed to ESO+. I was one of those people who dropped my sub for a while. Anyways, back to the graph. I find it very strange that the red line actually increases during this point, so I'm not sure if we can trust the stats from Active Player.
Yeah, anytime you're doing something where a bunch of players leave your game, you're probably doing something wrong. Not what you want to be doing.
In November, we start to see the numbers slowly going back up with the Firesong DLC release, and it peaks in December and January. This is probably because of the holiday period and the New Life event in-game. The numbers seem to go back down to what they were before the holiday period on the blue and green lines in March, which was curious because this is when the Scribes of Fate DLC was released. For some reason, the red line skyrockets in March, so it's hard to tell if there were more or less players at this point. In April, all the lines peak, with red and green being at their absolute highest of all time. This is probably due to the Jester Festival and anniversary event taking place in April. And then we see the numbers decline again in May and jump up again a little in June, which is where we are now. I guess what we can ascertain from this data is that the number of players has stayed relatively the same over the last year, and with the huge exodus of players after Update 35, it seems like the numbers may have gone back to what they were during High Isle. In saying that though, it doesn't seem like the player base seems to be as big as it was before High Isle and Update 35. Obviously, we'll have to wait out the next couple of months and see what the data says post-Necrom.
I guess it's kind of interesting. I also think that could be a little bit of a bias based on people she knows and all that kind of stuff like that. Because I doubt the data is in for, it looks like they're doing end of month. So I wonder if that's why it hasn't changed just yet.
And then we can fully judge whether Necrom has saved ESO. Now I want to look at the data of active players over the past 5 years. This graph and data comes from mmopopulation.com, and apparently this website estimates the data based on Reddit activity and subscriptions. They run it through some silly equation that I honestly don't understand because I am bad at math, but apparently this graph is supposed to show the total active players across all platforms over the past 5 years. Keep in mind, this is different from the graph we just looked at, as it is now a total.
Because some communities might have like more active, like Reddit. Like I'm not saying it's bad data. It's just interesting because there could very well be more or less activity on Reddit. That's kind of interesting that getting data from there.
Total of active players as opposed to a daily average number of players. I also took the liberty to mark the release dates of DLCs and chapters on this graph too, so we can understand the reasons behind the player trends. So I'm not going to go into this too deeply, however it is worth noting the climbs in numbers around chapter releases. Most notably the...
Yeah, so this giant area here, right, this is COVID. This, I assume, marks a releasing of restrictions, people starting to go about their normal lives a little bit. I don't know. I don't remember the date if that lines up. I feel like I just started living in my house and I never left, and now I don't leave anymore. So,
months around the Flames of Ambition DLC and Blackwood. These are record high numbers. However, we do have to remember that throughout 2020 and 2021, the entire world was confined to their homes because of the Big C. No, not that Big C.
oh, yeah,
Honestly, I'm not sure if I can mention that word
without
without getting some yellow dollar sign or some warning under the bottom of my video, but you all know what I'm talking about. Let's just take a look at the end of 2021, however, when the Deadlands DLC was released. This is a huge plummet in the number of players, and I'm not sure why. It's a little strange, as this was the update when they added the armory system and curated drops, which were two huge quality of life features. This was the update where they also capped critical damage and healing at 125%, so maybe people were mad about that, but I'm not sure why, because most of the community was indifferent and the endgamers found a way around it. The player count seems to go back up a bit during the holiday period at the end of 2021 and then go back down again by March. They climb a bit for High Isle's release in June of 2022, but unfortunately, ZOS screwed themselves over with Update 35 and the numbers plummeted again. It seems as if they fucked up really bad because
a little hard because like all these people playing in this time period are probably not people who necessarily normally play a lot of video games. It's just that, you know, maybe they became gamers, and I'm sure some of them stayed. But a lot of those people just didn't have anything else to do. You know, they're stuck inside.
because the player count didn't even go back up again for the Firesong DLC or even over the holiday period of
Kind of surprised there's more of a recent tail off with this. It feels like there's so few people around these days, even compared to a month or two ago, at least in game. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Yeah, and I'm sure there's new communities being, you know, made and people starting new Discords and stuff like that. But yeah, I definitely agree, Lariel.
2022. It peaked again in February for some reason, right before the Scribes of Fate DLC was released, then goes back down to the same baseline after Update 35. Luckily for ZOS, they might have saved themselves with Necrom as the numbers seem to have started climbing again. However, at this point we'll have to wait and see if the damage has truly been done. From this graph we can see that 2020 to 2021 was probably the best time for ESO, as there were two really great chapters over those 2 years, with Flames of Ambition and Blackwood reigning supreme it seems. If you think about it, High Isle was actually the absolute worst performing chapter in the past 5 years.
I feel like I need to look up when that thing happened, when the C word, as she said, happened, because it feels like, it feels like that you know is a huge overlap here. So yeah, I don't know, that's kind of interesting.
With the active player numbers not even hitting 500k over the following months of its release. It really is a stark contrast to the numbers that Greymore and Blackwood brought. Personally, I think 2021 was the best year for ESO, and the numbers seem to support that. We'll have to wait and see if the numbers continue to climb after the release of Necrom though. With all of this being said, however, ESO is a 9-year-old game. While it's very far from dead, the player base seems to be declining. This is inevitable for a game of this age, as I would say. However, it's not like the devs have abandoned it.
Like, I don't want to like strongly disagree here or anything like that, but like, you know, I would be curious what the numbers are on WoW. And I'm afraid to touch anything on my computer right now since the stream is okay. But I would be curious what it is for WoW. And I think that also like I don't really disagree with her or anything like that. But you know, the thing is that a lot of it's like, oh, this is the way it was or whatever. There's not that many games and that much data. And if a game came out and continued to improve and continued to make itself better and stuff like that, there's no reason that has to be true. You know, that's also a problem with games. So being made on like older game engines and stuff like that. So, you know, the thing is that they sunset these things, and when they're being made on like last gen, you know, you really want so when ESO like first started to be made, like you want everything to be made on like the newest game engine, because that also really affects like the life cycle of it. A lot of companies obviously will make their own and do more stuff like that, but there's starting to be more and better tools out there that are more readily accessible to more people, more companies. But large ones, they do a lot of their own stuff anyways.
We still get new content every year, and there's still lots of work and energy being poured
so
into
even if
the
there's
game.
like a base product that they're purchasing and using, they make a lot of custom stuff.
There is no doubt that ESO is ZeniMax's biggest moneymaker, and over the years, monetization has gotten worse and worse. Many people speculate this is to compensate for the declining player base, and if the numbers on these graphs are somewhat accurate, then I would totally believe.
I think they're just greedy for money, and you know, Microsoft bought them, and they're probably concerned I don't even know if I would say it's Microsoft. I'm kind of speculating, but I think they just want money, and they figured out that people pay for these things, people buy them, and there's no like real protection. So like people are just gonna keep buying them. I don't know that. I think they're just greedy. Is all I'm saying. I don't know if it really matters anything else.
That this is the case. They're trying to push the crown store and crown crates more than ever now, it seems. If you're curious as to why this is an issue, go watch some of my other videos that I made about crown crates.
Because they make a bunch
I'll
of
link them
money
down
off
below.
of them.
And in saying that, the fan base isn't happy. This could definitely also be a reason as to why the game has declined in players over the years as well.
You know, it's interesting if you think about it, right? So we talked earlier about how, in the first half, we talked about how it would take $200 to get like an Apex mount. If you then think about it, okay, so someone paid $200 to get that mount, bought $200 of crown crates. If they would have sold that mount for $20, let's say, how many people would have bought it? Would 10 people have bought it that wouldn't have otherwise bought it? And so then, if the answer is yes, then I don't know, you just have to wonder like how much money are they generating? Now, the real number is that, yeah, somebody paid $200 and got it. A bunch of other people bought crates who wouldn't have otherwise bought crates on the off chance, thinking that there was a reasonable chance that they could get that mount, not knowing that the drop rate was 0.25%, 0.26 or whatever percent. And so all those people spending money. So, the idea is that the math is that they can convince you to gamble. And, D&D did this a while back in game stores. I went into a physical game store, and I was looking for a miniature, and I saw one on a box I thought was cool, and I was like, I was like, hey, do you mind if I open this? And he was like, no. He was like, yes, yeah, I mind. Like, no, like they're, and I was like, what? They're randomized. It's an opaque box, and the miniature you actually get, they put all the cool miniatures on the outside, but like what you get is actually completely random. And the only reason they do that is so you'll buy more than you otherwise would. And so as long as they can do that, it's just interesting the way the math works. They don't want to sell you a product because they can get more money if they make it randomized or surprise mechanics. And so what that really tells you is that, like, okay, this whatever reasonable price you would pay for this thing, if you think of your reason and you're the average person, they get more money on average by doing the other thing. So you got to think that, okay, on average people are spending $30-$40. I don't know how much, but that's the math that's going on, which is kind of interesting. Yeah. So surprise mechanics was EA, a lawyer for EA, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, speaking in the UK or in the EU. And they said that, players enjoy surprise mechanics. I thought that was pretty funny.
All right, so now that we've seen the numbers, let's talk about why Necrom might not be ESO's saving grace. As I already mentioned at the start, the vibe from the player base is definitely off when it comes to the new chapter. People seemed pretty excited to get a new class after about 4 years since Necromancer was released. However, the PTS dropped, people got around to testing it, and I think the hype died down a little bit. Depending on what kind of content and skill level you play at, your opinion on the class might differ. Personally, I think it's okay as a DPS class, and it's pretty alright for support. The buffs are nice, however, I feel like the class has not brought enough to the table to completely spin the game 180. I remember when Necromancer was basically the best class out there for a very long time. You'd basically see trial groups of all Necromancers because they were just so good. However, it seems like the same could not be said for Arcanists, unfortunately. And I think that's the issue, it's just alright. Now, I do want to mention that I've really only tried out tanking on the class.
A lot of people really hate the beam, and really don't like the class. And it's kind of interesting if you think back over the past year. And I'd be curious how you guys feel about the Arcanist class. Like, what do you like? What do you don't like? But it's really interesting because what they did over the past year, when you look in hindsight, is like they changed Templar. And maybe they changed Templar for some other reason, but it really looks like that they changed Templar because it was a class that you hit one button, it had a really long channeled spammable or your main attack ability. And so, that was kind of the go-to class. Well, now they switched it up, and it's crazy to me because a heavy attack is 1.8 seconds. And so what does that math work out to? 3.6. So yeah, that's 2.5 times as long as a heavy attack, which heavy attack feels like a long time, right? That was like hey, if you don't have super high APM, doing a heavy attack build makes a lot of sense for you. And then they made a class where the channeled ability is 2.5 times longer. it's just like, wow, kind of a left field kind of thing. And then you're supposed to like light attack weave after that. Like that just feels really awkward to me, and I don't love it personally. sleep emoji. Yeah, the beam lasts for 35 minutes. Absolutely. Yeah, that is what it feels like.
And I gave the DPS stuff a little bit of a go, but overall, I am not a huge fan. I think I need to play around with the class in different content more, but I do have to say the portal ability is actually pretty fun to mess around with.
Oh, there we go. Got it to work. Oh gosh.
Why is my game keep crashing? I just want out of here.
Oh my gosh.
Can you mount
Oh, this is okay. That was. Turns out that was a bit of
Oh my
sarcasm. That the portal
my God.
mechanic is fun to play with.
Now, some people are probably happy that the new class.
I will say that it does look really. 35 minutes sounds about right. Yeah, I will say that it does look really pretty. The shuriken mechanic where you throw your writhing or something rune blades, I think it looks cool. It's a direct ripoff of Overwatch. Like Genji from Overwatch. Can anybody like back me up on this? Is it Genji? I don't know. The ninja guy on, or maybe Genji is the guy that like floats around, like meditating. Maybe I'm thinking of the wrong guy. But it's like a direct ripoff of Overwatch. The only person you should play in Overwatch is Wrecking Ball. That's true. He's pretty cute. Oh, okay. The beam is a Mora skill. Oh, really? Zenyatta. I'm sorry. Okay. Am I saying that right? Oh, okay. So all these abilities are from Overwatch, Electric? Are you serious? Like those two main abilities they just rip straight off of Overwatch? That's insane if that's what they did. I'm sorry I'm having to look so far, but I'm afraid to touch my computer because I'm afraid the stream is going to go down. Oh my gosh. Gerbil exploding emoji. Lyriel, yeah, Wrecking Ball, super fun. Okay, you haven't played like 3 years.
All right, and as it has been mentioned in the past, other classes became pay to win because they were just so good. Yeah. Honestly, I'm all for not paying to win, but I feel like at the same time, there really isn't anything special about Arcanist.
Yeah, it was a little bit kind of crazy that like it was only Necros in groups, and it was like clearly that they were way too good, and then they like nerfed them so that there was no reason to run them anymore, and people just kind of stopped running them, even though they make really great healers and still really great tanks. And honestly, like for the average player, the Necro res, if you're in any sort of group content, is like a lifesaver. That's a game changer right there. And so, it would be cool if they left more of a reason to play it and didn't completely like nerf it into the ground. And I forget what razor it is, but there is. I'm getting errors on the stream here. Hopefully we don't go down. But like don't assign like malice to what can be explained by basically like by incompetence. And yeah, I guess that may be true. I don't want to make it seem, but it does feel that way too. And sometimes when they're communicating, I don't know. I feel like I see. Many times more than the average ESO player as far as like what the devs and community, people at ESO actually communicate. And also people talk to me like, hey, I talked to the devs at this event. And a lot of times the feedback I get is from people is like, I've mentioned some of my thoughts and they're like, yeah, you'll see it on some of my videos. And they're like, yeah, I talked to this person at this event and they basically blew me off. And it's like, wow. Okay, that's kind of crazy. Some from people that have said, developers who have said, they love the events because they love to be able to talk to people. And then this person came up and talked to them and they like kind of just blew them off. And, it doesn't matter if the person, was what they said had to say was valid or not, right? Like you still want to make your customers feel listened to. So I don't know. Let's keep going.
It's definitely a novelty, and the skills and animations need a lot of tweaking, as it's just full-on screen vomit from your own skills and from other people's skills too, even with additional ally effects turned off. So overall, I think the lack...
Hey, listen, I'm going to have to strongly disagree with Azura here. I love the memes and the pictures of just like the blinding green light at the dolmens where everybody's beaming. I think are hilarious. I'm in it for the memes. I meme hard. So I think that part's fine to me at least. No one ever said anything. What do you all? Well, Lyriel, I'm sorry, you said something. Electric's been talking. Anybody else? There's several people. What do you guys think about? I want to hear what you think about the class.
Of excitement over the new class could be a contributing factor as to why Necrom might not be able to bring ESO back to what it used to be. Please tell me if you think I'm wrong. I know that there are some people out there who absolutely love the new class, but from what I've seen from the community, a lot of people feel indifferent about it, and a lot are even complaining because it's causing them to not even be able to play the game because of the visual effects. Alright, now moving on to story.
Huh.
I did already touch on this at
I'm curious about the console folks, if like they're gonna have problems with the game just being too much graphics going on. Yeah, you play with High Group 1 for a reason. That's fair. But that's not everybody can do that. Like if you're a raid lead or something like that, you can't play with that, or otherwise it causes problems. At least not without like a really, really good group. Obviously, you know that, but
the beginning, but I think ESO has suffered recently due to its quests and writing. Now,
what are those Ogrim doing in the background? I need to go talk to these guys. She did such a good job on this video, just like as someone who has to edit and make videos and stuff like that. This took a lot of work and she did a really good job with it.
Just want to say, as I'm making this video, I have not finished all the story quests in the Necrom Zone. However, I have played about half of it and a lot of the side quests, and from what I've seen, it just has the typical ESO-esque story writing. As I already mentioned, High Isle was a massive disappointment when it came to the quests. I can't comment on the main quest in Necrom as a whole yet, however, some of the quests I've done just make me feel like the writers assume that I have the intelligence level of a 5-year-old.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go! Pardon me. You're it. You can't catch me!
High Isle had the same
You raid lead with High Group 1 sometimes, Electric? That's hilarious. It looks like Green Chaos to me. It'd be cool if it did a lot of damage. You haven't used it yet, so I don't know. It does a ton of damage. Yeah, it does. And honestly, if you like slot a few crux generating skills, and to any players out there who are Arcanist, if you slot what is it? It's from the tank skill line, Crux Weave Armor, I believe is what it's called. That will, when you take damage once every 5 seconds, it'll generate a crux. You can like just beam and beam and beam and beam, and you barely have to do anything else. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just have the nameplates running around. I get it. One of the things about the quests, since we're talking about this, like I really agree. There's some little things that they could do that show like a remarkable like lack of polish to me. I don't know if you guys have ever done some of the Grotwood quests, but there's one where you go and talk to people that are defenders of the green, I believe is what it's called. And I could be convoluting that with something else, but there's a quest. I actually did a short video over it, where you go talk to this like great tree, right? And then you got to do some quest and you become, a protector of the green or whatever it is. And, you have 3 choices at the end of the quest, and you can pick one, and they're flavored around various things. I don't want to like give away the quest, but you do the quest, and they tell you like you're going to become a defender of the green. And I finished the quest, and I like pulled up my menu to see if I had like a new title, and you don't get a title for it. And it's just like, I mean, how hard would it have been to add a fun title for doing that quest? Like when people say I want in-game rewards, that's the kind of stuff they look for, right? It's not just like, oh, I completed these 50 things and I did, these four quests and I completed this quest line. Like it makes sense in the story that you would earn this thing. The same thing with like little pets. Like if you had to save a guar, right? That would be your favorite guar. I mean, they did something like that with the hound and, not exactly, but they did something like that with the hound in Blackwood. But like, I think, a lot of people liked that quest and a lot of people went and did that quest. And it just seems like there's a lot of really low hanging fruit that they could do to really add to these quests. It's like they have, yeah. Anyways, I'll stop ranting.
Same issue with writing, really. The whole Ascendant Lord thing still has me reeling.
My favorite part was when the Ascendant Lord said, "It's High Isle time," and proceeded to High Isle on everyone. Truly a peak in game moment.
Anyways, I saw a good thread on the forums asking why all the dialogue is written in a way that assumes our character just woke up from a bout of amnesia and has no idea who, where, what, or why they are. I understand that there are a lot of players who have not played any prior Elder Scrolls games or may not be familiar with the lore. However, as the forum user mentions, things could be at least written in a slightly different way, instead of just asking, what the heck? I don't think the story or quest
Defender of the Green is from Lair of Marsalok. That might be it. I'm trying to remember what it is then, unless they just use that same thing.
in ESO really have ever been a selling factor. However, in saying that, I totally recommend everyone do the Blackwood questline if you haven't already, because that one was actually pretty good. I think a lot of the player base is tired of the same old quest formats, the same writing, the same stupid and limited dialogue options with no consequences in any choice you make. Another thing I also want to mention on this point is that the devs seem to rely heavily on nostalgia for a few of the chapters. Look at the Morrowind chapter, Greymoor, Blackwood. They're all in places that we've seen in previous Elder Scrolls titles. And to an extent, Necrom is definitely relying on some nostalgia factor from those die-hard Morrowind fans out there, like me. And we are revisiting Apocrypha, which was seen in the Dragonborn DLC for Skyrim. Elsewhere, Somerset and High Isle were cool because they're in places we haven't seen before and didn't rely on...
The motto for game devs is anything worth doing is worth redoing. Okay, it's just like movies. You know, you can guarantee some number of people are going to be into it just because you're doing the content they've seen before.
Including things from the previous Elder Scrolls titles, as long as you don't count Arena, and I want to see more of that.
Wait, what about Arena? Hold on,
Another reason why see for Skyrim. Elsewhere, Somerset and High Isle were cool because they're in places we haven't seen before and didn't rely on including things from the previous Elder Scrolls titles, as long as you don't count Arena, and I want to see more of that.
Did anybody play Arena? I played Arena. That was like one of the first games I ever played. Anybody else? Any Arena fans out here? They had a version of that in Destiny, but it usually doesn't mean much unless you're gilded Dredgeton. I don't know what the last part means. Unless you're gilded Dredgeton.
Another reason why the chapter may not be as successful as prior chapters is lack of good sets and gear items. The new mythics were looking great when they came out on the PTS, and then they nerfed them into the ground before they even released.
Whatever. It's awful. It's an awful change. My disappointment is immeasurable. My day has been ruined.
Anybody else remember this? Oh man.
Every time I think they're like really trying to throw the players a bone and like actually help groups out. Turns out it was an accident.
Oh man, I'm sorry. I don't want to laugh at Skinny's pain, but like, yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, when they broke Skinny, man, Skinny just seems like the nicest guy. He tries to keep it professional too. And he just gets so frustrated. If you watch like his like patch notes and stuff like that, I don't understand why like they should hire him or maybe they probably, I don't know, but they should listen to him at least. You know, they have these creator programs and I don't know why his takes on things are like so informed and he understands the like player experience so well. And I don't know, maybe I'm not saying that, you know, some of the devs don't or whatever, but like what they do, the effect of what they do stuff that like, yeah, this is going to have horrible effects. And, you know, it's just like, if they would just like listen to him or just like run it by him or other people, you know, if they would just talk to some people that were, yeah, that played the game a lot and probably understand the player base clearly better than the developers, right? Because if you check their advice, you know, it's right. And it is like you know, he's right. That's all it comes down to. And what the devs do a lot of times cause more problems than they solve. And I'm sure they have reasons for it, but it doesn't really matter if the end effect is like worse, you know?
The Mage Amulet is still kind of useful, but it's really only good for certain scenarios and classes. Let's take a look at some of the DPS mythics from previous chapters. Going back to Greymoor, Thracian Stranglers were all the rage. God, I miss
yeah,
but
so
it's really only...
so my problem with this mythic is I'm glad they nerfed it, but like that's the thing. Like when this came out, and I think Skinny Cheeks talked about this, when this came out, it was like crazy. And then, you know, I was like, it was upsetting for me, honestly, because this basically did away with like 3 trial sets that you would normally have in any kind of optimized group. And like on the one hand, that makes it easier, but it's like, why would you continue to have those trials those trial sets be best in slot, then release one item that completely does away with them. And then the expectation would be then in another year, they would release some new mythic that would then replace that one. And so then it would be like, well, are you going to go back to all those 3 or 4 sets that you just got rid of? Like, it just seems to mess up with the meta for in-game players so much. And I know that's like, in-game player problem, but it just seems to mess up with the meta so much for basically no reason. There's other ways, there's other items, there's other things they could have done. And like doing something like that, even like, a lot of people get, because if you're a serious in-game player, you pay attention to these patch notes, and then when you see something crazy, it's just like whiplash. And a lot of people that don't keep track of all this stuff are like, in-gamers are mad. They're always mad about something. And, I don't know, but I think maybe that's valid to some extent. But, the thing is that just a whiplash, just why would you do that to your player base? Why would you go from something that is so broken to something that is so useless? It's just like messing with people for no reason. You know what I mean? It's just like, it feels like someone's just like messing with you, right? Just toying with your emotions. And that doesn't feel good for anybody. I like this 4-hour patch notes reviews. I don't even care about most DPS changes that much, but I still watch them. Yeah. I mean, for sure. I love Skinny. One of your core playlists is Destiny. In Destiny is called Gambit, and it's a slog. Dredgen is a title you earn if you play through it all. Okay, all right. It's all good. I appreciate it, kiddies. No, I still appreciate it. I need to play Destiny. I like logged in and played a little bit, but been having some elbow problems, so I haven't played anymore.
Good for certain scenarios and classes. Let's take a look at some of the DPS mythics from previous chapters. Going back to Greymore, Thracian Stranglers were all the rage. God, I miss using those.
Yeah, so this is, a good example, right? Like, this is a good thing. It gives you weapon and spell damage. It increases your damage. It's a mythic you want. Like, that makes sense, Similarly with the other mythics, like the kilt and stuff like that. It's like, okay, this is a good mythic. It makes sense. Sure, do we all feel like going and farming the latest mythic because we absolutely have to have it for a trial? Not really, but it's not the end of the world with, the latest. I don't even remember what it's called now. Whatever this other mythic was. Let me see. Scrolled here. Anyways, yeah. Velothi or Mage's Amulet. With this thing, just like getting rid, so minor force and then getting rid of it's just critical damage and all that stuff, like where it started and where it ended, the extra penetration that it would give. So you didn't need Alkosh, you wouldn't need EC, so you wouldn't need an EC Crow, you wouldn't need Alkosh in your group. And it was like, well, why are we getting rid of these trial sets that people have had to go farm and everything like that? And then you're just like doing away with it. It's just crazy.
God, I miss using those. People were complaining that the Greymore chapter was pay to win because the mythics and gear were just too good. Then, of course, a year later they nerfed them, but hey, at least they paved a way for the Harpooner's waiting kilt with the arrival of Blackwood. I remember day one of release, standing in Shadowfen with probably a million other people, all harvest.
Anybody have PTSD for farming in this kilt? It took me so long to get this kilt. Daedric, clearly Zos knows better than the in-game players. That's why they change directions every 6 months. Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because they came out and said, and I've actually heard from a couple of other people that are related, like at some point the game doesn't belong to you. It more belongs to the players. And so it's like they were acknowledging that, and also kind of feels like they're acknowledging like, hey, we're kind of done with this game, but we're going to keep making it for you guys or something, which is, I could go on a whole rant about the card game. The card game in ESO, I find it extremely fun. I think it could be a standalone game, like an app or something like that. But what is it doing in the middle? It's like a game within a game, and it has nothing to do with what ESO is about. But they did it, and they said this. They did it because that's what the devs wanted to do. And I understand like rewarding your team or letting them like do the stuff they want to do. But you know what? Like that's not an MMO, and it's just so weird that you have this mini game and you're going to spend all these time and resources, and there's stuff that players want. And as far as I know, like when I play Tales of Tribute, I run into the same people. Like I run into people I know, and I run into like the same people, even the ones I don't know. And because that's how like small the community that plays Tales of Tribute is, I assume. I would be really curious what the numbers are, but it's like, you know, you're humoring the developers, but they're being paid to do a job, and if they're tired of doing it, like maybe they should do a different job. I don't know. You know, it just seems like, okay, well, we're going to stop developing the game. We're going to use the resources and tell people that we're developing a product for the game they're playing, but actually we're kind of just doing what we want and playing our own game. You know, it just kind of feels a little bait and switch, if you will.
Water Hyacinth and Nirnroot over and over for the lead. Zone Chat and Shadowfen had more PvP in it than Greyhost probably has ever seen. It was hilarious. Then, of course, about a year later, they nerfed the kill. However, it's worth noting that it's still pretty good to use to this day.
That's true. Kitties, no, they do not. If they released a physical, like, you know, version of the game, though, I would absolutely buy it for sure. Just to play with friends and, like, tell them about it. It would be super fun. Electric replying, small Tales of Tribute community. I think you could say the same thing about in-game too. It's kind of the same people there too. Yeah, I would agree. Absolutely. Yeah. In-game's so small. You know, one of the things like about in-game and you know, it's a really small community. I've said this before that like, it's honestly kind of a wonder that they spend time, you know, doing it at all, because it is such a small community or whatever. But one of the reasons that it is such a small community, and I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, I know, but for anybody who doesn't know, or might be new or just watching or whatever, you know, there's like overlaying content. And overlaying content when you're leveling is hard. Once you get to max level and you get some decent gear and you kind of know how to use your character, it becomes like super trivial, okay? So like it starts out hard, it just goes down to like, you know, off the screen, okay? So we have like overlaying content, pretty trivial. And then you have like world bosses and maybe some of the newer dungeons that are a little bit harder. But there's like 50 dungeons or something. I don't even know how many there are, but there's a lot. And these dungeons, maybe there's more than that. These dungeons are, yeah, sure, some of the newer ones are harder. That's the general rule. But there's nothing that tells you which dungeon is harder than another. And sometimes they release one dungeon will be easy and the other one will be really hard. And so you have no idea. So you're just like randomly going into places, have no idea if it's hard or not. And then you have trials, which are also kind of on the same level depending on the trial. And maybe a little bit harder, maybe a little bit easier even. And then you get into vet, and vet is just like, it's up here, you know, like vet is so high. And then when you get into hard mode is that much higher than vet. And so it's just like these crazy, just cliffs. It's not a step. It's a cliff. And if you want to climb it, you need some climbing gear. You need someone to belay you, and you need to know what you're doing, or you're probably going to hurt yourself. And then you have people that like go into stuff that have no idea what's going on. And, you know, I've had people, and I've mentioned this before, but I've had people whisper me in a trial and be like, hey, you need to kick this guy. They're trolling. And I'm like, wait, what? They're like, they're trolling. They're here to troll, man. And I'm like, okay, what did they do? And they're like, I just watched them. It was in Cloud Rest. This is the example I always use. I have more examples, but like, and they're like, they're running into orbs. They're like, the group is going this way, running from one boss to where Zamaja is coming up. And there's an orb over here. And this person turns and runs into the orb in front of the group. And I'm like, huh. And they tell me they keep doing this. And they're like, watch them. And I watch them, and I watch them run into orbs. And I'm like, so I whisper this person, I'm like, hey, how's it going? And I'll make this quick. I've told this story before, but like, I'm like, hey, how's it going? I talked to them for a second, and they're like, pretty good. I think I'm doing good. You're telling everybody to get the orbs. I'm trying to get the orbs. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this person has no idea. They're just charging into the orbs. Did I explain the orbs? Yes. Is it too much information for someone to absorb? Absolutely. But they were doing the best they could. And, you know, if they would have been a different group, they would have been kicked, and people probably would have been, you know, been mad at them and said mean things to them because they thought they were trolling. And if that's the kind of, you know, thing that the end game turns into because of the way it's designed, like that's on the developers. And so in game is never going to grow if it's like that. There's no room for people to learn and grow and learn new things. Should change the title of this to Nightharrow Rants, I guess. This is Electric, excuse me, overland content is still hard as a tank. Yeah, I bet it is. I mean, it's hard to die. It's also hard to kill anything. So yeah, I guess that makes sense. Sorts Snake Experiment. Am I saying that right? Tales of Tribute versus the NPC. Now after Necrom takes way longer now as it starts to use the patrons. Okay, that's interesting. Now not harder. You still win. Just takes way longer, and the rewards still suck just as much. Oh man, that's harsh. And then Electric said it takes 5 minutes to kill a wolf. Yeah, I feel you on that on my tank. But you can on a tank. Kitties, if you're on PCNA, you should come hang out with us. Yeah, the trick is that, you can find casual guilds that will run normal trials and just get a little comfortable with it. That's all you gotta do. Go in, and there are places, and this is the problem too, because, these communities kind of fall apart after a while when, because of some of the choices the developers make. But you can find really nice groups. You might want to be a little bit careful, but you absolutely can find nice groups. I recommend going with like a social guild. There's a lot of social guilds that will run vet trials, and that's a great place to start.
And then the divisive Oakensole ring comes along a year after with High Isle. Obviously, we're all familiar with this one, and even though they nerfed it recently, it is still the most popular mythic item in-game and probably of all time. Of course, there are some other great mythics from the previous chapters that are still used today. The issue with Necrom is that there were no amazing mythics at launch. This, of course, means that it's not pay to win. However, a trend that ZOS has followed over the years is releasing something really good with the new chapter to make people more inclined to buy it. I'm not saying either of these things are right or wrong, I'm just stating the facts at hand. In a similar vein to that, gear sets, or more specifically...
I think there's something valid to that. Like maybe they're like, oh, people think that we're doing this as a way to, force people to buy the newest chapter. So like, let's not make it good. I think most content creators have acknowledged, and I use content creators because we have to think about this stuff, and because we're going to make videos about it and whatever. So we have to think about it more than the average person, because the average person just wants to play a fun game, right? Hopefully. And so there is this thing where like, yeah, you need the new stuff. You want it to be the new cool stuff because you want a reason to go get it. You also just don't want it game breaking and whatever. And I think the best thing to do would be to kind of ignore a little bit of that and just try to make a fun game. I think that would be probably the best thing to do. And if they do that, make something that's new and interesting and whatever. And, like sometimes it feels like they're out of ideas because they do some really kind of like, what are you doing kind of things. Skinny Cheeks and other people have, like if you ask some in-game players, they could probably give you some pretty good suggestions. If they solicited feedback from the community about things that would be cool and interesting, they would probably get some pretty good advice.
Trial sets. Again, going back to gear sets from previous chapters. A lot of trial sets that are years and years old are still being used today and are still best in slot. Look at the gear sets from Cloudrust and Rockrow, for example. Some are still very useful to this day.
Are you by the same name in guild? Well, we'll talk later. DM me. If you haven't been running trials and you haven't gotten any vet trials yet, DM me. We'll get you in.
I actually think the perfect example of what sets from a new trial should look like are the ones from last year from Dreadsail Reef. Every single set from that trial was super popular and best in slot from release.
Yes.
And they're still at the very top to this day.
Absolutely.
All 4 of the sets from DSR are perfect, really, and they haven't nerfed them at all. Now, if you look at the sets from Sanity's Edge, only one, maybe 2 of the sets are like somewhat useful, and the best one is Ansel's Torment, one of the DPS sets. This is a stark contrast from almost every other previous chapter, really. Again, touching on the pay-to-win side of things, yes, you do not need to buy the new chapter for the new best gear, if you even care about that. But at the same time, this has clearly made the chapter suffer. Don't get me wrong, I love the new trial, it is so much fun. The trial itself is beautifully made, the mechanics are unique and fun, and they dialed back the difficulty so lower skilled players can complete it easier. But I think once...
I think you guys know how I feel about this trial. I don't hate it. I just think that it's underwhelming when you walk in the door and then there's no group mechanics. When we were running through this, we kept trying to find ways, like in the first boss, when you get frozen, of like, oh, maybe we got to stack with a person who has like a fire dot and stuff like that. Basically, everybody walking in and trying to figure out the mechanics came up with better ideas that would be more fun than what they went with. is literally all it comes down to. So you had a group of players who walked into a trial, had never seen it before, and immediately came up with a better idea of better mechanics that were more group oriented, like you would expect a trial, because that's why most people run trials, is for the group mechanics. And that's what it was like. The other issue with just trials in general is that even on veteran, there are a lot of mechanics that are very binary. You either succeeded or you wiped the group or you died. Tanks, right? If you miss a block, you're dead. If you miss a heavy attack block, you're going to die. And there's a lot of mechanics. That's one of the problems with Dreadsail Reef, the first boss. It is 10 times harder on the tanks than it is on anybody else in that first boss. Like the healers, it's a lot harder. But tanks, it's so unforgiving. And also, if the healer's not doing their job, the tank dies, which also feels really bad. So on the tank, if you're that tank. So, and a lot of groups don't even know when that's the case. And so it's just poor. It could be better designed. It would be appropriate for hard mode, not appropriate for vet, which is that cliff thing that we're talking about.
People get what they need from it, the trial will drop off fairly quickly, which is definitely sad for PvEers.
That was awesome.
There could also be some outside factors contributing to the lack of popularity with
see that
Necrom.
again.
Name-
I hope did she make a short out of
Definitely
this?
sad for
I guess,
PvEers.
I don't know if it would show up on a short format. But that was amazing.
They dialed back the difficulty so lower skilled players can complete it easier. But I think once people get what they need from it, the trial will drop off fairly quickly, which is definitely sad for PvEers.
Wow. That was amazing.
There could also be some outside factors contributing to the lack of popularity with Necrom.
I've already heard people being bored with the new trial. Is anybody already hearing that or feel that way yourself?
Namely, Diablo 4's release happened right before Necrom dropped on PC. I'm not gonna lie, I did actually feel a bit bad for ZeniMax because the chapter launch was so poorly timed in this regard. I think the lack of selling factors of Necrom, the reputation ZeniMax has given itself over the years,
yeah,
and
that clip was amazing.
particularly recently with Update 35, and just general decline in player base has caused many people to choose to play other new games like Diablo
Just don't
instead
think it's
of
very
ESO.
fun. Yeah.
Another thing I've noticed, which honestly I actually don't know if this is just all my perception of things and in my head, is marketing of the new chapter. I remember how aggressively they advertised Blackwood and High Isle, and how much extra promotional stuff they did for these chapters. I remember just seeing ad after ad after ad after ad for High Isle last year on social media. However, this year, I can't say I've seen a single ad for Necrom at all, and I am more involved with Elder Scrolls Online on social media than I've ever been. So, of course, Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg know I'm a fan and should be pushing those ads onto me. Also, I don't know if you guys remember this, but didn't they make a Blackwood-themed hot sauce? And they paid some metal bands to make those weird metal songs that were clearly...
I kind of wonder if they spent more on social media. I don't know if that's true, but I kind of wonder. Social media, like especially content creators and stuff like that, are notoriously cheap to pay to advertise.
Written and produced by people who don't even know what an Elder Scroll is. That means it's going to be copyrighted anyway.
But the thing with that is that people don't know it's an ad a lot of times, and that's why they do it too, because it looks like organic, recommendations.
So it doesn't matter. I can't show any of it. This is already inaccurate because there's no kids in ESO. It looks like they just use like a generic like medieval city. Like I get what they're going for, but yeah, Viking roleplay stuff. Like they just hang some like Daggerfall Covenant banners in like some Viking town or some shit. I'm assuming that's supposed to be like the Ascendant Lord or something. I don't know. I bet these people had fun though. Rip. Mommy? Sorry. Mommy? Sorry. Mommy? Sorry. What are they doing? He's dead, right? Like what the fuck is this shit, man? Or they just rezzed him or something. I don't know. Okay, it's not actually that bad. And before you call me a poser, yes, I love metal, okay?
Okay,
Nickelback is my favorite black metal band.
When you say on Reddit, like, are you talking about like creators or by like actual like ads through Reddit, like in the page?
Ratlord and Five Finger Death Punch are also my favorite melodic death metal bands too.
What? I knew we were friends for a reason.
I love metal, okay? Nickelback is my favorite black metal band.
Okay, I don't know about that.
Ratlord and Five Finger Death Punch are also my favorite melodic death metal bands too.
All right, Five Finger Death Punch.
Look, okay, the songs weren't that bad, but my point I'm trying to make is that
I like Five Finger Death Punch because those are my people.
feel like there's way less promotional material for Necrom. Like, I guess it's still early days, and they might pay Nightwish or something to make a Necrom song, and hell, they might even release Hermaeus Mora-themed Calamari. Advertising is no doubt a very powerful medium, and if they're not pushing the new chapter as much in that way, that could explain why it doesn't seem as popular as previous chapters. So sheesh, this is becoming a long one. I'll finally get to my conclusion of this video. What we've clearly seen is that player counts are lower than ever before, however they do seem to be going back up. It might feel like this new chapter is not as popular as previous ones, or the game feels dead, however I don't think that's entirely the case. I've had a few friends return to the game, and I've heard a lot of others are coming back too. The estimated player counts clearly show that there's more people who are probably playing now. However, we will not be truly sure of how successful Necrom was until a few months later at least. I think the chapter is not as successful as it should be, namely because of all the reasons I mentioned earlier. The class, the story, the zones, the mythics, the trial, and of course people's perception of ESO and ZeniMax after Update 35, along with many other varying things of course. Again, don't get me wrong, I do like the new chapter. I feel like it's fallen
No
short and
worries, kidding.
failed in a lot of ways to make it the saving grace that the game direly needs. Maybe there'll be better stuff in store with the next big update, however, I'm not convinced it will bring droves and droves of players back. Oh well, better luck next year. Alright, if you made it this far, thank you for putting up with my voice and opinions for this long. I want to end on a high note and actually talk about some things I do like about the new chapter. We aren't all doom and gloom around here. I will keep it brief though because this video is already long enough. So I do like the new zones, particularly Apocrypha. It is actually so beautifully done and there's a lot of little details here and there, and clearly a lot of time went into making it. Also, I fucking love the new mount. Like, look at how gross and disgusting this dude looks. Like, he looks fucking sick. Actually, now is probably a good time to mention that I am a massive H.P. Lovecraft fan, and this chapter and all the tentacles are tickling me in all the right places. I can't say that. The new furnishings are so fun too, and I also love the introduction of
That's
the
funny. She's like, I gotta edit that out. And it's like, nope, just left it.
Bastion mimics. This game hasn't had
Been there,
quote-unquote
done that.
hard overland content since Craglorn, and it's super fun to have something new that you can't just solo with your eyes closed. Of course, like I said, the new trial is so fun too. Rockrove and Cloud Rush still have to be my all-time favorite trials, but Sanity's Edge is a great one too. Also, can we just talk about the stackable treasure maps? Like, this is
Not
clearly
horrible.
the
I
best
hate the
feature they've
second
added
boss,
ever.
though.
Also, I love how they changed how fragments from
And I
public
hate
dungeons
that
drop now
it's
too, where
reused
you get a
the
way
first
higher
two
chance to get
bosses,
one if it's like your first one of the day.
Up to
So
like
overall, yes,
the
Necrom
second
is fun.
boss.
It's definitely way
is
better than
like-
High Isle.
or no, through the
However,
second
I feel
boss
like
is
it
all
was
the same
not as
stuff.
good as it could have been, and that kind of sucks. If you're thinking about coming back to the game, give it a go. This video is not sponsored by Bethesda, I swear. Anyways, thank you all for watching. As
Actually,
always, of course, tell me how wrong I am in the comments below. I always love reading them. Also, let me know what you guys
Gotta
think
make
about
sure
Necrom
it's
and if it's saved the game, and if it's brought back more
9
players.
A's
Also, let me know what you think of the
underscore.
new class. As always, links to sources and my Twitter will be in the description. Have a good one.
That's fun. So there's a couple things that didn't come up. I thought they would come up organically that I just want to like talk about and say. One of the things is that like games, especially MMOs, like, and I'm sure Azure would agree, but like they don't die, right? Like people are still playing old school RuneScape. People are still playing WoW. They don't die. Like I expect in 5 years, I will still be logging on and playing ESO. Will it be my primary game? I doubt it. Like there's a bunch of games coming out in the next couple of years. And I mean, who knows? They might all be terrible, but I imagine, I think if nothing else, Ashes of Creation will be out by, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Will be out by then. And so I think there'll be other games, but will I come back to try the new trial if they're releasing new content? Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, like, I mean, especially right now, like what else, like people, sure, some people are going to go play Diablo, you know, but like that's a different kind of game and that's a different kind of experience, and not everybody are looking for that. Just like with things like Final Fantasy and World of Warcraft, those are different graphical styles of game and different, you know, Final Fantasy, like there's some things that just the whole look, the over, like the sexualized animals and children kind of creep a lot of people out, and that's just like a non-starter for them. You know, there's some of that, a lot of that stuff, like we have a bunch of rabbits. I thought making a bunny character was cool, and then you're like, why is this like a Playboy bunny? I don't love that. Nothing wrong with it. It's just not my, just, you know, not what I love. And that's the same way for a lot of people out there. And so it's not like everybody's going to like stop playing or whatever. Like MMOs don't like die, you know, that they don't die like other games do, or, I mean, they can, but it's just a lot less common and not with like a decent player base. And, you know, the biggest threat is like the game not making enough money. So they decide to pull the plug. But, you know, I'm sure Crown sales are better than ever, the way they're pushing all the new stuff. So, yeah, I still expect ESO to be around for a long, long time in the future. And there's a lot of people that have like, you know, the sunk cost fallacy, or they just like it. They don't play that much, or maybe even they do. I think most of them, you know, don't play that much if they're going to be playing it, you know, consistently as their core game for years and years and years, because eventually it's like, okay, yeah, this is the same old stuff. But if they're producing new content, I mean, people will keep playing. I plan to, you know, keep playing years from now. Again, at some point, I think I'll probably be playing some other game more, but it doesn't mean I won't come back to try the new trial or something like that, as long as they're still making content for it. So, Okay, one thing I'm super excited about is the 2-person endless dungeon now. I know that it's the future. That's the future, but that's, I guess, part of this chapter. Literally learning to DPS for it. Oh, wow. Okay, that's pretty strong. Oddly, it's not a shocker. OSRS is alive, and the fact that RS3 is alive is a shocker. Yeah. That's old school RuneScape, for those who don't know. Yeah, I've never seen a community that hates the dev team that much. That's pretty funny. Yeah, I mean that is kind of how it is, but yeah, I don't know. But yeah, the main thing is just want to say that like ESO is not going to die. Like these games don't die. Like people have asked me like or think that I'm quitting ESO or something like that because I didn't make a video for a while, and it's like has nothing to do with any of that. It's just like issues I've had. Yeah, people are going to be playing ESO for a long time. I think there's a lot of times like people get frustrated because they want the game to be good. They want it to be better. They're very much like saying, "Hey, here's what we'd want," and they're just not getting it. And so that kind of creates the frustration. And then it creates frustration because then there's a lot of people. The other thing I learned, and I guess the other thing I want to talk about is that like no one wants to hear bad news, and no one wants to be told that the game that they love, that there's problems with it or that someone doesn't like it. Like when I made, this critical videos of the new trial, and I mentioned some stuff about some of the devs and like how they're kind of their attitude towards the game. People were upset. People, I lost subscriptions. I lost subs. And I mean, that's okay. I want people to, watch and go for what they like. But a lot of times people do not want to hear, bad news at all, which is, I kind of knew that from working a lot of times. I just mostly got it from bosses that are really wealthy and they just don't want to ever hear bad news. But I guess it's maybe perhaps a more common human trait. So, this video was interesting and cool. I also wonder if like Azura might get backlash from this, no matter how like fair and balanced and whatever else, because people don't, they'll just get mad because they like it and they're mad that you don't also love it or whatever, or think that there's problems or whatever. So anyways, I think a little bit of understanding on everybody's part could probably go a long way. So as far as the endless dungeon, I am cautiously optimistic is what I would say about that. I am afraid that it's going to be more of the same, where there's not going to be a lot of mechanics, because there can't be that many mechanics because you're supposed to be able to do it solo. So I guess they could do mechanics like you see in arenas, and maybe that's what they're going for. It's kind of like an endless arena, but optional second person. Yeah, I don't know. You love roguelike so much. Yeah, they said roguelike, but then they also like said some things that were very un-roguelike electric. So I don't know. I'm glad that you're excited for it. I guess I don't want to. I've been hurt before, electric. I don't know if I can dare to hope again. Yeah, I hope it does also get harder with stages and all that stuff. So that it does. Yeah, I think there could be some really cool things. I don't know what they're planning, and they don't really tell us a whole lot. They treat us like mushrooms, keep us in the dark, feed us shit. So they don't really tell us a whole lot. I'm not crushing your dreams. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to crush your dreams. But I'm just like, I don't know. Creative Excuses. Hey man, what's going on? Appreciate you dropping by. You're pumped for it? Yeah. Hey man, a lot of people are excited. I hope it's awesome. I'm again, cautiously optimistic is how I describe myself about it. Cause yeah. Is there anything that you guys are looking for specifically from the dungeon that you're like really pumped about or whatever? Like, is there any like core thing that you're like, yeah, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I want from it. Because like one of the things I want is like a reason to run it too. Like if it drops good mats or something like that, that would be interesting. That kind of goes back to in general, there being a little bit of a problem with rewards in ESO, in-game rewards and stuff like that. But this is for those who don't know, Creative Excuses. Creative Excuses Gaming is his full YouTube tag. He does a lot of and Creative. You like, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. I would say a lot of your content is geared towards doing a lot of solo stuff and soloing dungeons, a lot of it, or just making like really all around, I guess, good builds. Some that are designed to both be tanky and do good DPS and etc. I'm hoping they'll release ultimate modifying weapons. Huh. Something to make Toxic Barrage for PvE. Okay. Toxic Barrage, that's the arrow, right? That's the bow ultimate that's like psh, 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 splash, splash, splash. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there could be a lot of really cool stuff, and you know, if you can go deep into the dungeon and get like really cool stuff, like I could definitely see that being pretty addicting. I could definitely see myself getting into that for sure. Well, it's getting towards midnight, so I think I might call it here. I appreciate all of you sticking around, especially through all the technical difficulties. I am streaming from a Mac right now because I thought that would be the best way to go about it. I'll try to do some troubleshooting before the next stream like this, but anyways, yeah, I think we'll probably catch you guys later. Creative is saying definitely solo content. And stuff that's good for pugs. So basically, yeah, good for pugs means you can solo with it. Yeah, that's what he makes. So yeah, you can check him out. He has some pretty good builds. So a lot of them are heavy attack. I'm sure you've got some interesting stuff with the Arcanist. I haven't been able to check out what you've got recently with the Arcanist, but yeah. Anyways, well, guys, I appreciate everyone watching, and we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for joining. And Creative, thanks again for dropping by. And Electric, everybody, Kitties, Daedric, appreciate all you guys. Lyriel, you guys are awesome.